from Placer AI. We have Ethan. You've probably seen him in the past. But we have Ethan here that will join us momentarily. Ethan, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, it's awesome time for you to be involved. Obviously, we're post kind of the new year. Physical retail was, or physical in general, was it's a trend that I think everyone is tracking post COVID and probably extending beyond that. You guys just raised another funding round, and I think you guys are a unicorn now. Is that
Yes.
right?
Yes, that was our latest announcement of a week ago.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about Placer AI for those that don't know.
Sure. So Placer is a location data company. If you think in the absolute simplest terms, people vote with their feet. We show you how they vote across the United States to retail locations every single day. We get our data from a panel of 30 million devices throughout the US. This is all anonymized aggregate data, so we are GDPR and CCPA compliant. Now, we're a privacy by design company, so our infrastructure was built to account for these problems at the simplest level. These aren't transitions that we needed to make. We then analyze that data with machine learning and AI algorithms and have estimations to, again, retail locations throughout the United States.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, no, it's informative information always. Now let's kick it off with a couple different key areas, and then end it with maybe some of your predictions for the year ahead and potentially beyond that. I don't know where you want to start, whether it's the extended store traffic that at least there's been a lot of commentary around traffic or retail traffic starting earlier in the season, and therefore maybe retail sales numbers we saw last week. There's a lack of seasonality that's actually taking place. So there is no seasonality potentially this year. Anything there? Fitness traffic. Again, Planet Fitness is something we own, but also track pretty regularly. Luxury is an important industry that we believe reigns supreme and will continue to thrive over the next call it decade. And then again, with that, we'll end with predictions. But any of those categories, where do you want to start?
Sure. So I'll kick off. We'll kind of go in chronological order. So let's start with the end of last year and this extended season. And I think it is, again, and not to exaggerate, I think this is the single most important thing we've seen in retail in a very long time. And the reason is we live under the assumption of the customer is always right, and therefore it is the retailer's job to adapt to the customer. But what happened in the holiday season was something very interesting. Retailers were facing a really unique, perfect storm of challenges. So it was supply chain, labor shortages, COVID, right? Those three issues. And they knew those things kind of have a big impact in the traditional structure, which is we're going to have a lot of visits on Black Friday. We're going to have a lot of visits on Super Saturday, and we're going to build our season around that. Add to that the removal of Thanksgiving. So another challenge for many of these retailers. And what they did was communicate effectively with consumers and say, we have these challenges this year. In order for us to be able to give you what you want on time, we all need to shop at off-peak hours. So come earlier, come a little bit, come at different days than you normally would, and you're going to end up with the things you want, and we're going to be able to service you better. And customers bought into that. And we saw visits way up in October, even with Black Friday visits down significantly for many retailers. Take Target. Thanksgiving visits are gone. Black Friday visits are down. Super Saturday visits are way down. Yet November and December visits overall are up because they were able to get visitors to come at different times. And this came without the normal, hey, we're just going to cut costs on everything, because those supply chain issues did raise prices. And that was a really significant moment for retail to recognize that it's not always, all right, how great is your doorbuster deal or how built are you around a specific day? It's, can you communicate effectively with your audience? And do you have products that people want and love? And I think that was a very, very significant story. And that kind of feeds into what we've seen at the beginning of this year, which is the first week or two of January were really strong because of this return cycle. So much online shopping, lots of visits maybe earlier in the season. You end up, you know what? I don't love what I got, so let me go back in the store. And that visit's really important because it's not just the return. This isn't like a net zero. I give something back and then I either spend the exact same cost. Very often it's I'm bringing something back and I'm already in the store and I like this thing, it's a little bit more. And so for many retailers, I think we're going to see early January as a really significant boost that helps offset some of the challenges that they saw in December. I think when you think about, we talked about luxury. Luxury is one of those sectors that we have an index that tracks a certain number of luxury categories. And I think they've been uniquely well positioned. So, you think about their audience having slightly more disposable income, plus the fact that there's government stimulus, plus the lack of international travel, plus the ability to save a little bit more over the last year and a half, considering the circumstances. And it is a really unique environment for luxury because you have this high intent shopper that has money to spend and that wants to spend it with you. And it's a goods that generally, if I'm going to buy, a really expensive item, I want to touch it and feel it and make sure it's exactly what I want. So I'm going to go to that store to do it, where the conversion rate is higher. And it doesn't come with the same cost of, I'm going to buy it in 3 different sizes, try it on at home, send back 2, and then good luck retailers stomaching those costs. So I think luxury's been really well positioned as well. The one that's really interesting for us is what you kind of mentioned, which is fitness. The fitness sector as a whole, so again, taking in the wider landscape, has been doing much better than expected in the last 6 months. So flirting with 2019 levels, if not above 2019 levels in much of December. And that was a really strong sign. Now, obviously, COVID is kind of the worst case scenario. Like if you were create something in a lab that would be bad for gyms, it's COVID. But I think even what we're seeing in early January is, and there are declines, it is not on, the 2020 pace, which is what we're comparing to that 2 years prior. But it's not that far off. So you're talking about in some cases 7-8% down from where they were, depending on the chain. And I think Planet Fitness is a great example of one that we still feel really bullish on as a result. And by the way, Blink is another, these kind of value-oriented fitness chains. But even kind of the more, hey, we provide everything, come get on it, whether it's a Soul Cycle or a Lifetime, we feel pretty good about the wider fitness space. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. One, people missed it. 2, they realize that there's this wider mix of things that they're looking to get from a fitness perspective that really orients itself towards what a value chain can provide. So I'll spend $10 a month at Planet Fitness while also having a Soul Cycle subscription and having a treadmill in our home. Even though the narrative for so much of late 2020 and 2021 was Peloton's doing great, goodbye everything else. That's just not how the fitness sector works. We joke there's not a suburban home in America that doesn't have a treadmill covered in laundry or like old boxes. It's not because treadmills aren't great. It's because it's part of the mix. It's not the whole thing. And I think we've seen that with fitness. I think January is going to be a little bit more rough than we would have hoped because of Omicron. I think the real test is going to be late January and February, because if we see those visits continue to go up and go back to those 2020, 2019 levels, well, there'll be a lot of reason for positivity and optimism. In terms of looking forward, I want to break it into two categories, and we'll do it quick. The first is the trends. So when we think about trends, I think there's 3 that are really important. One is the regression to the norm, right? So for brands that were doing incredibly well during the pandemic because of those circumstances, expect them to fade back. And those that were getting hammered, like in AMC theaters, expect them to start trending back to where they were. And it's an important context for how we understand performance. This isn't a brand that is all of a sudden doing terribly just because their comp to 2020, when things were perfectly oriented for them, has gone away. It's just kind of this regression. And we need those year over 2 year, in some cases, year over 3 year comparisons to give us that context. The other element is kind of right sizing and what we mean by this term. So we're seeing a lot of brands that are lowering their footprint in order to be more optimized. So take a CVS. CVS has seen visits crush during the pandemic, and especially in the last year. The fact that they're dropping stores is because they realize they don't need as many to serve their audience, especially with their shift towards more in-store services. And I think that's something we're going to see from a lot of brands. This isn't about closing stores for the sake of closing stores or closing stores because this is a lower performer. It's going to be about, how do I reach the same audience with a more optimized fleet? And I think we're going to see other brands that are expanding because they don't have enough reach. So take a Dollar General with Pop Shelf or others. And even different concepts. So like a Bloomingdale's launching a Bloomies, it's a right-sizing effort in order to reach audiences that their current format doesn't enable them to get close enough to. And think as another example, think of a Sephora coming into a Kohl's or an Ulta coming into a Target. It's right-sizing in the sense of, how do I utilize different formats to reach different audiences and different places to give myself the most optimized reach of the people I want to get close to. And I think it's something that's a really important theme for the coming year. In terms of retails, I want to do one obvious, the one that's going to succeed. I want to do one that's kind of like a medium, let's call it, and a third that's a higher risk in terms of like, what do we expect? On the obvious category, I think it's Target, right? Target is constantly investing in where they think the retail world is going. They have a unique level of understanding of who their audience is. And it's an audience that most retailers don't get. And it's the middle. How do you have an audience that at the one time, Apple is a product that they'll buy, which is a more expensive product, but at the same time, they want to save money on socks. So this idea that we're going to have someone who really gets that middle and the nuance of how to reach them is something that's super significant and going to give the brand a lot of success in the coming year from our perspective. When we think about a medium, think about like a Kohl's. Kohl's did not have the greatest year last year. I think there was a lot of reasons why, but they're really well positioned for what's coming. And a big part of that is their willingness to invest in innovative ideas like Sephora in Kohl's. And we actually see those locations outperforming standard Kohl's locations. So these ideas that they have of how to expand, how to refresh, how to do their department model differently seem to be working, and they should be generating a lot of excitement. When we think about the high risk, I'll include two that are less popular here. One is kind of Tuesday Morning and Bed Bath & Beyond, just because of how well positioned that home furnishing sector is. When we think about how visits are coming back, the way they're looking to optimize their fleet, it's a really awesome opportunity for these brands to catch fire or to do a lot better than expected. Again, this is in terms of how they're doing in terms of visits to those locations. We expect pretty strong things from them, at least to outperform what's maybe expected. And the last one is Staples. So look at Staples visits over the last year. Obviously, they were down compared to 2019, but that started to flatten out and in fact outperform 2019. And granted, there were some closures, but there is a feeling like they have found the right mix. If they can figure out how to take advantage of this work from home model, the fact that it's showing some sustainability, the return of office and their role in between those two places, I think there's a lot of promise for Staples specifically and that wider office sector, even with the omnipresence of Amazon looking forward. And that's our look back and kind of our look forward as well.
Yeah, no, super interesting. I think we have a couple more minutes here that I'll just ask a couple quick questions. So in the fitness category, what are you seeing? More consolidation? Are you seeing, obviously Planet Fitness just pre-announced 15.2 million members for the upcoming quarter or prior quarter. And again, is there consolidation there? I know 30%, roughly 30% of gyms closed. And it makes sense for the low-cost leader to kind of continue to take share, and they've kind of expressed that. But in your data at Placer AI, what are you guys seeing?
I mean, exactly that. We've been talking about this since the start of 2020. Some of these gyms are closing. By the way, large chains to kind of smaller gyms, and that Planet Fitness, because of their reach, because of their model, they're really well situated to take in visits from a lot of different places. And this kind of Peloton workout at home individual, the idea to have a $10 membership for Planet Fitness as well is not this crazy concept. So I do think that kind of value model fitness chain is going to be in really high demand. That said, I think we're going to see a strong year for the wider space.
Sure. Yeah, no, makes sense. I actually have a Peloton. I have a Planet Fitness membership for whenever I travel, and then a local gym membership for my actual day-to-day. So it's definitely this combo that is in my life. Ethan, look, I appreciate you coming on. As always, it's always a good conversation. You guys have some of the best data out there. Congrats on the $1 billion valuation. And yeah, I hope to see you in the future and speak again. And again, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Sean. It was a pleasure to be here.
All right, so that was Ethan from Placer. Interesting conversation as always. Again, we utilize their data and resources to try to best understand what's going on in the physical world. I think the kind of two quick highlights is obviously physical fitness in the physical world is coming back. The extended store traffic, people starting earlier in the season. I think this past year and the year prior, seasonality is just simply out of whack. So seeing all these retail sales and some of the figures, I think it's a little hard to construct what's exactly going on. But I think the key takeaway is that consumers started much earlier. Luxury continues to reign supreme. and then some of the predictions that he had in terms of companies like Target versus like a company like Kohl's. So interesting conversation. We'll have him again at some point.